My name is Israel. I work with contractor businesses across the United States, helping them build stronger companies, optimize their tax strategy, and think long term. On this channel, we talk about the structure behind successful contractor businesses. Today, I want to talk about something many contractors don't think about until much later in the life of the company, and that is how owners pay themselves. More specifically, why paying yourself a very low salary can actually create problems over long term. One of the most misunderstood decisions business owners make is how they compensate themselves. Many contractors believe that paying themselves less makes the company look more profitable. On paper, that may appear true. If the owner takes a smaller salary, the profit shown on the financial statement increases. And when you look at those numbers, it can feel encouraging. But when someone evaluates the business seriously, the numbers are examined very differently. When a buyer looks at a contractor company, they're not just buying revenue, they're buying an operating system. They're buying a business that should be able to function even if the original owner is no longer involved. And that means that the buyer has to understand the real cost of replacing the owner's role. If the owner has been paying themselves far below market compensation, the financial statements can create a misleading picture. The business may appear more profitable than it actually is, not because the company is doing anything wrong, but because the cost of running the company has not been fully reflected in the financial statements. When a buyer evaluates a company, they usually adjust for this. They estimate what it would cost to hire someone to replace the owner's responsibilities. And that adjustment reduces the company's real profit, at least the operating profit. In other words, the profit shown on the financial statement may not represent the profit a new owner would actually receive. This is one of the reasons experienced buyers recalculate the numbers before determining the value of the business. Businesses that already reflect realistic owner compensation tend to present much clearer financials. The economics of the company are easier to understand as well. And the transition from the current owner to the new leadership becomes much easier to evaluate over time. This concept is often referred to as normalized earnings. It simply means adjusting the financial statements so they reflect what the business would look like under normal operating conditions. Let me give you a simple example that contractors immediately understand. Imagine a contractor doing $4 million in revenue. The financial statements show $600,000 in profit. At first glance, that looks like a very profitable company, but the owner is only paying themselves $40,000 a year. Now a buyer looks at that business and asks a different question. What would it cost to replace the owner? If the buyer determines that replacing the owner will cost $200,000 per year, that cost needs to be reflected in the financial structure of the business. Now the real operating profit is no longer $600,000, it's closer to $400,000. That difference can dramatically affect how the business is valued. A business that only looks profitable because the owner is underpaid is not actually more profitable. It is simply presenting incomplete financial information. But valuation is not the only reason this matters. There's another issue that appears when owner compensation is set too low, and it has to do with how the owner interprets the financial performance of the company. When compensation is artificially low, the financial statements can suggest the business is more profitable than it actually is. The owner looks at those numbers and sees strong profits, but in reality, part of those owners' personal income is still inside that profit number. This creates confusion because the business appears profitable, yet the owner may still feel financially stretched. Many contractors experience this. The company looks profitable on paper, but the owner still feels pressure personally. And over time, the owner begins taking additional money from the business, not through salary, but through distributions, draws. Eventually, those draws, distributions, begin functioning as hidden compensation. Now the financial structure becomes even less clear. Part of the owner's income comes from salary, and part of it comes from profit through draws. And the business owner can no longer clearly see the true performance of the company in these conditions. Many owners believe that they're increasing profits by paying themselves less, but in reality, they're simply hiding the true economics of the business. If your financial statements do not reflect the real cost of leadership, they are not telling the full story of the company. And when the financial picture becomes unclear, decision making becomes harder. The owner may believe margins are stronger than they actually are. They may grow faster than the business can truly support. They also may underestimate the amount of capital required to scale. This is why separating compensation from profit is very important. Salary represents the cost of leadership. Profit represents the return generated by the business itself. When those two concepts are mixed together, it becomes difficult to measure the true health of the company. There's also a strategic advantage to thinking about compensation with more structure. When owners pay themselves appropriately, the remaining profits stay inside the company intentionally. Those profits can strengthen the business over time. They can support capital reserves, they can fund equipment, systems, or leadership hires. Over time, this creates a much more resilient company. One that is not only profitable today, but capable of sustaining growth over long term. Most contractors spend years building their businesses. They invest time, energy, and risk into growing their business, but the financial structure behind the business ultimately determines how durable that company becomes. A strong business is not defined only by revenue. It's defined by whether the financial system behind that company can survive a change in ownership. Buyers don't purchase the owner's sacrifice. They purchase a business that can operate without it. And owner compensation is one of those pieces that quietly shapes that system. Because that structure is what turns a company, a contractor company, into a real asset. Hope that makes sense. If you're a contractor and these videos are helpful, consider subscribing to the channel. I share insights from what we see inside contractor businesses every week with the goal of helping more contractors like build stronger companies.